So I've gotten 2 rides on the Niner MCR, about an hour and then about a 2-hour ride. Today there's an event called Tour of the Quilt Country that's 106 miles. You do 62 miles, come back to the car, get some lunch, and then head back out for a 44-mile route. So it's nice that you can bail if you are not having a good day on the bike. I plan to do the whole thing. So I'm excited to see how the MCR does over a ride this long. It's a little risky taking a bike out that I've only ridden 3 hours. Usually it takes me like 5 hours to really get a bike set up the way I like it. But I figured this is a really good test to see how the comfort is on a ride this long. So I'm gonna go head out. I may even talk about how I'm feeling during the ride if we stop. And then at the end, of course, I'll discuss how the bike's riding and how I'm feeling on it. That's JOM making a video. YouTube videos galore. So we're at the rest stop, really enjoying the MCR. I'm standing in a drive-thru, gonna make sure I don't get run over. Yeah, we're all doing YouTube. This is the YouTube stop. So yeah, the group thinned out, got pretty fast, really fast, like really fast. So, you know, here's the thing is, my second ride on the MCR, I was like, I'm not sure about this bike. But then you kind of get into this rhythm. You really smooth out your pedal stroke and you make sure you don't bounce. And when you ride smooth, get really used to the bike. Especially when the washboards and stuff, little potholes, all those little divots in the road. I'm actually really liking the bike. All right, so ironically on this ride, I'm with Mike Gann, who was the former president of Niner Bikes. And so Mike now works for Look, but Mike was actually on the original design team of the MCR used to be a mountain bike, and now the MCR is the full suspension gravel bike. So I'll say you were on the former development team of the MCR. So what were your kind of original thoughts of the bike? Like what made you guys back then start heading this direction?
Well, I think the bike was a kind of a product of employees creating bikes like this out of existing frames.
Like monster cross bikes.
Monster cross bikes, right? Combination of some mountain bike frames. We had the RLT series was doing pretty well.
Yeah.
And the next sort of evolution of that series was looking at ways to make it more comfortable. Because as you start to ride further into the backcountry, rougher roads, comfort starts to be a real issue, even a performance issue. Yeah, so that's where it started.
And you got to ride some of the prototypes originally.
I did. This bike was sort of the last project that I was actually hands-on involved with, and that gives you an idea of the development timeline, because it's about, I believe this is about 3 years, almost 3.5 years from idea to something that a rider could get in the store.
I wouldn't think it would take that long, but I guess, I mean, there's so many things involved to put a bike to production like this.
Yeah, especially if you're trying something new, and this bike was a departure from what was available in the market. Your testing phase, your prototype stage is even that much longer.
Yeah.
Normally a bike is about 2 years from idea to market, but with something like this, you add some more time.
So what do you think is the type of rider who would benefit most from the bike? Like when you guys were thinking about this, what kind of rider did you have in mind?
Like I said, it was the rider who was approaching gravel and starting to extend either their range or into rougher terrain, maybe trying to shoot off on a little piece of single track, and you're getting to a point where the tires, the wheels can't take it. The suspension starts to suck up some of that stuff and make rougher terrain a little easier to get over.
Yeah, and it's really surprising me. I'll talk about it here, but it's like a hover bike feeling. You just, especially when we got some sections that were kind of divots and washboards and potholes and things like that, and that's where the bike just really shines. So I'm liking it. So well, thanks for talking to me.
Glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah, it's kind of cool that you're on the ride. So are you going to do the second half?
I think I'm dipping on the second half. I'm off on a plane to France tomorrow.
Oh,
so.
that's right. He's got to go to France. So rough life.
Yeah.
I'm a little jealous. Okay. Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks for talking to me. All right, so I just finished my ride on the MCR, and before I get in the car and drive back home, I just kind of want to give my thoughts so far on this bike. So I ended up with about 98 miles. I cut it short by about 8 miles. My IT band was getting a little tender. I'm made to be on a mountain bike. I didn't want to ramp up my effort and distance too much. So this is definitely the longest ride on a gravel bike that I've done in a while. Two weeks ago, I did a longer ride time-wise on a mountain bike and I was fine. So it's just being hunched over. I've got to ramp up my miles slowly when I do gravel. So cut it short by about 8 miles. But as I ride this bike, I'm kind of formulating who I think this bike is made for. I'm not going to go too much into it right now, but I will say that for kind of like race situations, I think you're going to want to be on the standard gravel bike like the RLT9. This ride ended up being faster than I thought it was going to be. Had I known the first half was going to be as fast as it was, I probably would have brought my other bike. For two reasons. One is this bike is about 3 pounds heavier, and then the shock, when you're just drilling it with those surges, I would have to lock out the shock, because if the shock was open, when you're really sprinting, it'll bobble a little bit. Now that being said, if you sprint smoother, so you're not bouncing up and down as much, and you kind of keep your body more level, you're fine sprinting. You're not going to be as fast as a rigid bike, but you're not that slow. But again, for race situations, like this ride, the first 62 miles we did in 3 hours on gravel. It was moving, and I didn't spend a lot of time in the front. And so when you're further back, you get those surges. So you come around a corner, the front takes off, and then there's that accordion effect where the back's trying to catch back up. In those surge situations, I wanted to be on a standard gravel bike. Now the second half of the ride was more mellow. In fact, it was just me and 2 other guys. We headed out early and just did an easy pace. But that's where this bike absolutely shines, because you've already got 4 or 5 hours of riding in, and you're getting a little tired. And actually overall my body's fine. It was just my left IT band was getting a little tender. It had nothing really to do with the bike itself. But I don't feel like that fatigued. My back doesn't hurt, my wrists don't hurt. So it works. This bike, the more I ride it, the more I kind of appreciate the qualities of the bike. So like I said at my lunch stop, or at the convenience store stop, you really have to kind of be smooth. You don't want to bounce up and down and be rough with your pedal strokes. If you're smooth with your pedaling, you're rewarded with a buttery smooth ride. And I probably locked out the shock. Well, every time I got on the pavement, I locked out both the front and the rear. The rear shock, when we're on gravel, I left the front open, well, in the middle setting. But the rear shock, if the road got really smooth, the dirt road, I would lock it out, and then if it got a little rougher, I would unlock it. And then in situations where we're going to sprint, I would lock it out. But even with the shock locked out, if you hit a really hard bump, it'll compress. And right before we got back to the parking lot after the first half of the ride, I couldn't see a pothole coming up because there were people in front of me, and I hit it. And even though the suspension was locked, it still absorbed it. And I was like, oh, that was cool, because when you lock it out, you can sprint really well, but if you hit a really hard hit, it'll open up. The rest I'll save for my upcoming reviews. I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts so far. But for long rides where you're just keeping a steady pace, you're not just absolutely drilling it, this bike's awesome. It really is surprising me. But I'll keep making notes and formulate, like I said, the ideal person for this bike. So that'll wrap it up for this video, kind of an interim report of the MCR9 after a longer ride. Any questions or comments so far, drop those below. Thanks for watching.